What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Who's up with me? It's 12:33 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is May 5th. Decided to take a break from work. Uh, been on my grind with just some business related stuff. And I'm being stretched in some areas of uncomfortability when it comes to technology, graphics, all that type of stuff. So many nights that I find myself not sleeping because of insomnia. I am up working. And tonight was a little bit different because it was a few things that was just on my heart, on my mind. And I'm like, you know what? This is really the start of a new day. And I just wanted to come on, see who was on, just have some dialogue, some conversation, some things again that's been on my heart, my mind, and see who else that's up. A night owl might have experienced some of these same things, and we just have a cool conversation. Um, the one thing that I wanted to discuss, I have three topics quickly. The first one is rejection. Rejection. I was talking to uh, some acquaintances this week, and I come to the realization that I still struggle with rejection from childhood, um, rejection from uh, my father not choosing to be in my life, um, to be the other half of the parent uh, formula that I needed. Um, certain family members. I felt rejection from certain people who I befriended, felt rejection from. And I had to sit back and say, even though I'm an adult and, it's been years, you know, uh, I'm not going to tell my age, but I was born in the late 70s. And, there's things that we deal with, that we go through. And, you know, you may be a spiritual person, um, but natural things are still natural. They still have natural effects on you. So your faith, your belief, your spirituality does not erase natural pains. And I had to be honest with myself. And I really had to sit back and say, I feel some type of way, even though I'm, in my 40s, and I still have some hurt from childhood, feeling rejected from my dad. I'm not going to divulge all of the details, but my mother, she was married to a gentleman, and she had my siblings. The gentleman she was married to was an alcoholic and physically and verbally abusive. And, they would fight and, carry on. And they divorced. And she was a single woman for some years. And her being a single woman, she was the director of the YMCA. And during one summer, or preparing to go into a summer, she was putting out applications to interview new staff members. And here comes this much younger guy who came to fill out an application for a lifeguard position. And not only did she hire him, but not too soon after that, they indulged in a relationship. And she conceived me, and he didn't feel like he was ready to um, be a father, handle responsibility, and went and enlisted into the United States Army. And anybody that is a serviceman or who have served, first and foremost, thank you for your service. Um, the freedoms and liberties that we have is because of you putting your life on the line. But he went and enlisted in the military, and anybody knows anything about the military, they ask you regarding dependents. And that was the very first sign of rejection, because he said no. And he did a few years in the military, in the army. He got out, and he still wasn't ready to be a father to me. And he re-enlisted, but this time went into the Marine Corps. And again, do you have any dependents? No. And, just knowing that information, for years, I asked myself the question of what was so wrong with me that the man that was the reason that I had life never wanted to claim me. And again, my mother raised me, single woman, did the best she could. She never taught me how to be a man because it was impossible. No woman could raise a male and teach that male how to be a man. You cannot do that. You can raise a male to be responsible. You can raise him to be independent. You can raise him to be a survivor. You can raise him to be an overachiever. All these great attributes. But a woman cannot raise a male and teach him how to be a man. You can't do that. A man cannot raise a young girl and teach her how to be a woman. You can't do that. So there were, I would say, shortages that I had coming up because things that fathers would have taught their sons, I didn't have that liberty. I didn't have that. And I knew, there was a big difference. My youngest sister, there's a vast age difference. She's 10 years older than what I am. And I remember one particular year, I wanted to play Little League baseball. And we were very, very much so, as a family, into church. We had church every night of the week. It wasn't even a question of whether you were going to go. If you were sick, you still went to church. You did your homework when you came home from school. If you didn't finish, you took it to church with you. It was on the back pew. You took your pajamas because chances are you was going to fall asleep before they left church. It was that type of thing right there. And I remember one year I was begging my mother, Mom, can I please play Little League baseball? And my youngest sister, who was a teenager at the time, she had told my mom, hey, if you allow him to play, I'll go to the practices. I'll take him, I'll be there so he can go ahead and play. And even with that, I got teased. I've never had this conversation with my youngest sister. She'll see this later on. And I know we'll, get a chance to talk about it. But, this is just one of the things I love her for greatly because, she was there with me. And I remember all those other boys had their dads, their uncles, and their, much older brothers there to support them. And I'm showing up and I got my sister, because my dad, rejected me and he did not take responsibility for the fact of you have a male child, regardless of, my mom not wanting to be with him in a relationship, he still had an obligation to me, which he did not keep. So again, just going through life, Um, I'm not depressed or anything like that. I'm just sharing my heart, just sharing some things. And again, if any of you that are listening, watching this, if you all have comments, or if you all have things that you want to say or whatever, listen, shoot them at me. I'm open. This could be a dialogue, not just me sitting here talking. But that was one of the things that early on I experienced rejection. And which brings me to the next part of the rejection aspect. There were certain things that I had to accept. And it's crazy because as a young child, the only thing that you should be thinking about is school, your chores at home, um, following directions as far as your family and stuff like that or whatever, and just being a happy kid. You should not have to have the things on your mind that even deals with adulthood, but I had to accept the fact of, I don't properly have what I need in my life. I had to accept that. My father, he's not in the place, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, to be the man that he's supposed to be. He was a male because of what he was born with, um, but he was not a man, mentally or emotionally. And I had to accept that. I had to accept the fact that I'm in a household being raised, by my mom and my sisters. I had to accept that. I had an older brother. Um, my brother, when he graduated high school, he went into the Marine Corps. So with me being born and coming up, there was no man in the household, and I had to accept that. I didn't have a male figure one on one on a daily basis. I thank God for my uncles who were there, manly men. One of my uncles was a police officer. The other one, to be so, to be politically correct, he was hood. Um, my uncle Chuck, he was that hood guy. He was, the guy that make it happen. He was the guy that you go get when you got an issue, and Uncle Chuck gonna go on ahead and handle it. But they were there. They showed me love. They covered me as best as possible. They gave me advice as best as possible, and I had to accept that. The example of manhood that should have first primarily come from my father, it came from my uncles. There were men coming up in church that were there, and they had great hearts, they had great intentions. But another thing I had to accept was um, they were not men in the sense wherein their presence spoke for them. They were men where they had very dominant women. And I am not bashing anybody. I am not. But for what a man should be, you should naturally be a leader. You should naturally be a visionary. You should be able to set a course, especially if you have a family dynamic, and you should be leading your family. A man should not be led, and a lot of the men that were in church, they really didn't have backbones. They were told what to do, by their wives. They were not leaders. So I seen one example of manhood, from my uncles who were manly men, all the way around. I mean, cars, build houses, physical, all of that. They were, in the sports and everything like that. And then, you see the men that's in the church where, they're yes men, no backbone. I was told as a young boy, wasn't even a teenager. If you want to make your wife happy one day when you get married, as long as you're a provider, you make sure she has money, then that should basically go on ahead and keep her happy. A happy wife means a happy life. That was advice that I got from men in the church. They were not true examples of what a man should be. So that was the acceptance part, and not only that, but to accept me. I was not the young boy who was taught how to change, brakes on a car, how to, do transmission work, do anything like that. I was taught the things that literally my mom and my sisters knew how to do, because there was no male presence around, except for the interaction I had with my uncles, but I had to accept who I was, and then that brings me to the third part, which was the reality, and the reality is I was not like anyone else. You know, I had my own unique story. Everybody is unique in their own way, just like everybody has a fingerprint. Nobody's fingerprint is the same. I don't care if you have a set of identical twins. Your DNA, your fingerprint, there's going to be something different about you. And that was the reality of it, you know. But not just in my life, what about you all's life? What type of things did you experience as far as rejection from? It could be family, you know, acquaintances, friends. You could experience rejection, on a lot of different levels. But I had to always realize, and even now, I sit back and think, the only person that really never rejected me was Jesus. And I'm not trying to be all churchy and preach to you all or anything like that or whatever, but I just had to come to that reality, the realization of Jesus was always there, you know, Jesus and my gift of music. They never rejected me. Every time, I wanted to feel love, I heard some type of melody in my head. I would hear lyrics, just different things. I could hear a beat, and from that, I can compose a whole symphony. Orchestra in my head. I could hear the slightest little melody, and already I knew, how I was going to compose it. This is the verse, this is the bridge, this is, verse number two. This is going to be the pre-chorus. This is the chorus. This is drive of the song. As a kid, I was able to do that. One of the things I remember in school, teachers would constantly call my mom, and they would say he's being a distraction in the classroom. And my mom would say, "What is he doing?" Well, he finished his work, but he has the pencils and he's tapping a beat and he's humming or he's singing. And my mom would be like, "Okay, so where's the distraction at?" Because, I would do the same thing at home. And the teachers would be like, "Well, he got other kids that's, tapping and humming. And, this isn't chorus class, it's math or it's English or history." But Jesus, my gift of music never rejected me. I accepted it, I embraced it, because those times, those low points in my life where I felt low, where I felt less than, where I felt inferior, I always had music. I could go and sit down at the piano and I could mimic the sounds that I heard in my head. Wasn't trying to write songs, but I was just trying to get out what I was feeling, because I knew how warm and how comfortable my gift of music made me feel. And, I accepted that. And then the reality of, for everything that I felt like from a natural point of view that I didn't have, I felt like my gift of music enhanced me in other ways. I've got friends to this day that, I'm still cool with and we're still close. And, every now and then when we talk, they remind me, I was the guy that was walking down the hallway singing, at Plainfield High School, PHS, Plainfield High School, class of 95, you know, um, anybody that went to school with me that sees this, watch this, or whatever, you can go on ahead and make comments. But I mean, chorus, advanced chorus, gospel choir, band, I was that guy. You know, we used to be in a lunchroom, and I was the guy that would make the beats. Either beatbox, like Dougie Fresh, and make the beats on the lunchroom tables. While guys rapped, but then I'd be the same guy that make the beat and do the the filling music for guys that was trying to get their romance on, and kind of try to mac with girls, spit game and whatnot. I was the music guy. Back in the day, I was the guy that, and this is, some young people, may not, have any idea what I'm talking about. But, you catch this old school like myself, y'all know what I'm talking about. Back in the day when we had voicemails, we had answering machines. And I was the guy, because of music, I would have certain songs depending on the time of year, the season, and I would sing or play the music on my answer machine. So when you call, and instead of it just being, hello, you've reached boop, 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 boop. Sorry, I'm not home right now, but if you leave your name, your number, and a brief message, I'll get back to you at my earliest convenience. Thank you for calling. Goodbye. I didn't have messages like that. I was the guy that, right around Thanksgiving time, I would jump the gun because my birthday is a week after. And, I remember when Boys to Men came out with the Let It Snow, I was playing Let It Snow on my answer machine. You know what I mean? But I was singing Let It Snow, by Boys to Men, or, I was singing Coolin' You by Babyface. All This Love Is Waiting for You. Light skin and, with the good hair and singing and stuff like that. But, music was the reality of, I guess it was, it filled the void in my life. And, you know, what about you all? What's some of your realities? One reality is you're still here, regardless of the rejection, regardless of whatever pain we've experienced, regardless of the things people may have said that was negative towards us or about us, we're still here. Accepting the fact of, what, I've been through some wars, I've been through some battles, wasn't always victorious. I made it out alive, but I wasn't always a conqueror. I didn't always have things together, and let's, look at the reality of it in life. You don't always have things together. Life happens, but it's not about what happens regarding life. It's about how you handle it, and that's just what it is. The simple reality of, what we're dealing with now, COVID-19, this pandemic, it's global. It's not anywhere, any group of people, any culture of people that have not somewhat been affected. Life will never be what it used to be, but we have a new normal that we're approaching. Slowly but surely, every day on a day-to-day basis, we're approaching a new normal. This is our reality. But something that is also a reality is God is still in control. The reality is us as people, what, COVID-19 shouldn't, stop us from the way we're supposed to love our neighbors, the way we should just have respect for one another. COVID-19 shouldn't stop people from having morals and values, and again, this isn't, being on a high horse or whatever. It's just, most of this that I'm talking about is just conversations I have in my head, within myself, things I think about, just from a day-to-day basis, rejection, acceptance, reality, and at the end of the day, all of it was used to get us to the point where we're at now. All of it was used to shape us. Every experience we go through is, pretty much like another step, on the path of our journey, but again, hit me up, I'll put my email up here. Anybody got any questions, anybody got, anything that, they want to say, or, anything, email me, shoot me an email, hit me up on social media, about any of the three topics that I talked about, because I know I can't be the only one that has ever dealt with rejection, or having to accept things, regarding what your current situation might be. The reality is you're not going to stay there. Currently you may be in a situation that looks like a ditch. Guess what? Tomorrow you're not in a ditch. Literally every 24 hours, everything changes. Why? Because we get, new mercies, new grace. We have a new time. Literally time starts all over. So literally what yesterday was the fourth, it's no longer that. Today is the fifth. Brand new day. It's almost 1 a.m. That literally is almost 23 hours left that you have. On a weekly basis, everybody that's alive from week to week, we're blessed with 168 hours every week that we're alive. Doesn't seem like a lot of time, but you know what? Do this little test for me. Do this test for me. Sit down, get a pen and paper, get a calculator, whatever. And out of 168 hours during the week, start deducting where you actually spend your time. So for those who, let's just say, work the typical 9 to 5 job, okay, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, that's 40 hours. Deduct 40 hours from the 168. And then from there, go down the line. If you were a soccer mom or a soccer dad, or, if you went to school online, or if you were active in, organizations or your church or your community, whatever the case may be, start deducting that time. How much time per night, honestly, you sleep, calculate that, add that up, and really look at where your time was really being invested in during the week, each week. And just think about it. Just think about it. Now that most of those activities has been on pause because of COVID-19, we have more of that time back. So we're closer to having 168 hours granted back to us on a weekly basis. What are we spending our time doing? Is it dealing with the things of our past as far as rejection, trying to heal from those? Is it accepting things currently about yourself? Coming up with some type of plan of action, some type of game plan to change that, to offset that somehow. Folks may have, I don't do New Year's resolutions, but you have some people that do. And, when New Year's came, 2020, they said they were going to eat healthier. They were going to get in shape. They wanted to look better. You know, have you started that? And if you haven't, what's the excuse now? You have nothing but time. People that felt like, they were limited in their education. What are you doing to change that? You have the time now. Those who may not have been uh, as domesticated as they would have liked to be, you have the time now. There's a lot of things in my life that I've been adjusting and I've been making changes to because I'm taking advantage of this time right here. I'm taking the time to deal with a lot of the hurt that I have from my past so that I can heal from it. Not be perfect, but heal from it. I'm accepting a lot of things about myself. Some things, okay, I'm somewhat cool with, some things I'm not. So I have the time and I have the liberty to put plans together to change those things, to adjust those things. Not to go into full detail, but there was something that was on my heart that I've always desired to do. And for the past several weeks I've been doing some training and very 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 heavy training, but I'm working towards a very fulfilling career in chaplaincy, to be a chaplain. That was one of the things that shared it with a few people some years ago. You'll never be that. That's not you. You're not smart enough, and all this negative stuff. Well, I've got the time to do it, so I'm taking advantage of it. You know, um, Also something else that I've always thought about and had a desire to do, or whatever the case would be. I'm embarking upon joining a strong male brotherhood organization. After the process and everything, I'll share it with some of you guys and you'll see the updates. But just changing things about life, now that you have the time, 168 hours a week, where you have time to better yourself, you have time to grow, you have time to say, okay, these things were, me, last quarter. This is a brand new quarter. It's a brand new year. We still have so much time left in 2020. Let's not waste the time. Let's be productive on a daily basis. You know, that statement, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Well, one bite at a time, one step, in front of the other. That's how we accomplish changing things about our lives. We have the time to do it. Let's, focus. Let's put our minds to best use as far as getting better, being better, and doing better. Let's do that. Let's take advantage of this 2020. All right. I want to see everybody grow. Hey, this is it. Hope everybody's safe. Hope everybody's well. Take care of yourselves until we talk again. Have a good one.